The massive ship floated in the darkness of space like a sleeping giant. Its hull was scarred with countless marks from old battles. Strange electromagnetic waves pulsed from its damaged exterior. Commander Velthar stood on the bridge of his patrol vessel, staring at the readings with disgust. "What is this piece of junk?" he muttered, his tentacles twitching with irritation. "It looks like it survived a war from the Stone Age." The Galactic Coalition had discovered the derelict vessel near the Andromeda Gateway, one of the most important hyperspace routes in this sector. Nobody knew where it came from. Nobody recognized its design. It just drifted there, silent and mysterious. Science Officer Telena approached the commander carefully. Her skin changed colors slightly, showing her concern. "Sir, we should be careful. The energy readings are unusual. This ship might be more dangerous than it appears." Velthar laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the bridge. "Dangerous? Look at it. The armor is ridiculously thick. The weapons look like primitive projectile launchers. Whoever built this thing clearly never heard of energy shields or plasma weapons." In the corner of the bridge, Lieutenant Hyun remained quiet. He was human, one of only 3 humans serving in this entire sector. His eyes studied the mysterious ship on the screen, and something in his chest felt tight. The design looked familiar somehow, but he could not place why. "Prepare a boarding team," Velthar ordered. "I want to know what civilization was stupid enough to build something like this." 2 hours later, the boarding team entered the derelict through an airlock. The doors opened with a groan of old metal. Inside, the corridors were wide enough to move heavy machinery. Everything was built on a massive scale. The walls were lined with armor plating so thick it seemed excessive. "Who needs this much armor?" one of the Kravinian soldiers asked, laughing. "Don't they know about energy dispersion?" The team moved deeper into the ship. They found weapon systems that made them laugh even harder. Massive railguns lined the corridors. Physical projectile launchers sat in mounting brackets. There were no elegant energy conduits, no sophisticated plasma weapons. Everything was mechanical, heavy, and brutally simple. "These are ballistic weapons," another soldier exclaimed. "Actual bullets and metal slugs. What kind of primitive species still uses kinetic weapons in space combat?" Telena scanned the walls with her equipment. "These blast doors are reinforced with multiple layers. The control systems are all manual with physical backups. It's like they didn't trust anything electronic." "Because they were primitives," Velthar said confidently. "This ship probably belongs to some species that just learned to leave their planet and thought they could play with the big civilizations." Lieutenant Hyun followed silently behind the group. He ran his hand along the wall, feeling the cold metal. The construction philosophy was clear to him now. This ship was not built to be elegant. It was built to survive. Every system had a backup. Every backup had a backup. The armor was thick because someone expected it to take massive damage. The weapons were kinetic because someone needed them to work when energy shields and sophisticated systems failed. This was not primitive engineering. This was desperate engineering. The team reached what appeared to be a crew quarter section. Personal belongings still remained in some rooms. Strange symbols marked the walls. Telena photographed everything, her scientific curiosity overcoming her caution. "Look at this," she called out. "These symbols are not in any language database I have. But the mathematical formulas on these technical panels, they are sophisticated, very sophisticated." Velthar waved her concerns away. "Primitives can still do math. It doesn't change the fact that this ship is a flying museum piece." They continued deeper into the vessel. The scale of everything amazed them. The ship could easily hold 15,000 crew members. Modern coalition vessels rarely carried more than 200. Why would anyone need such a massive crew? Hyun knew the answer but said nothing. A ship like this needed thousands of people because when systems failed, people had to fix them. When weapons jammed, people had to manually reload them. When battles lasted for days, people needed to be relieved by fresh crews. This ship was designed to fight battles that would destroy any normal vessel. In the main computer core, Telena finally managed to access some of the ship's databanks. The first file she opened was a partial registry. Her skin turned pale blue with shock. "Commander," she whispered, "you need to see this." Velthar looked at the screen. The ship had a name, Indomitable. Below that was a construction date. His confidence vanished like smoke. "This ship is only 200 years old," Telena said slowly. "It was built during the Silent Era." The Silent Era was what the galaxy called the time period about 2 centuries ago. During those years, a mysterious species had briefly appeared in this region of space, fought a terrible war, and then vanished. Nobody knew who they were. The Coalition had only discovered a few scattered records of massive battles and destroyed fleets. "Check the origin data," Velthar ordered. His voice tense now. Telena typed commands into the ancient computer system. More files appeared. Ship specifications, crew records, mission logs, and then the most important piece of information. Construction location. Telena read aloud. Earth Sol System. Built by Terran Space Command. The bridge team fell silent. Terran. That meant human. Velthar turned to look at Lieutenant Hyun. "Your species built this?" Hyun stepped forward and looked at the screen. His face remained calm, but his hands trembled slightly. "We did." "But your people are traitors and diplomats," another officer protested. "Humans have been part of the Coalition for 50 years. You run merchant ships and research stations. You have never shown any military capability beyond basic defense forces." "No," Hyun said quietly. "We never showed you our military capability." "That's not the same thing." Velthar's tentacles curled with agitation. "This is a warship. A massive, brutal warship designed for extended combat. The weapon systems alone could level a small moon. Why would humans build something like this?" Hyun looked at the scarred walls around them. "Because 200 years ago we met someone who wanted to kill us all. And we decided we would rather die fighting than die begging." Telena pulled up more files. Battle reports appeared on the screen. Names of destroyed colonies, casualty lists running into millions, records of desperate battles against an enemy called the Vrikol Swarm. "The Vrikol?" Velthar asked. "I have never heard of them." "No one has," Hyun replied. "Because we made sure they don't exist anymore." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. The Coalition officers looked at the human lieutenant with new eyes. This friendly, quiet officer who served coffee and filed reports was part of a species that had built ships like this, ships designed to fight wars of extinction. "How many of these ships did humans build?" Telena asked softly. "The Indomitable was the 7th supercarrier," Hyun said. "We built 43 of them in total." "And where are the others?" "Dismantled, destroyed, turned into scrap metal. When the war ended, humanity made a choice. We decided to join the galaxy as friends, not conquerors. We took apart our war machine and built merchant vessels instead." Velthar stared at the ancient warship with new understanding. This was not a primitive vessel. This was a nightmare made real. Every excessive armor plate, every redundant system, every brutal weapon was designed by people who had learned hard lessons about survival. "Why didn't you tell the Coalition about this?" he demanded. "Would you have trusted us if you knew?" Hyun asked simply. Before anyone could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the derelict ship. Red lights flickered on throughout the corridors. Telena's scanner went wild with activity. "The ship is powering up," she shouted. "The reactor is activating!" Deep in the bowels of the Indomitable, systems that had slept for 2 centuries began to wake. Automated protocols engaged. Weapon systems came online. The ancient carrier remembered its purpose. It was time to fight again. The alarms continued to blare throughout the ancient warship. Red emergency lights bathed everything in a bloody glow. Telena's scanner showed energy levels rising throughout the vessel at an alarming rate. "We need to evacuate now," Velthar shouted, grabbing his communicator. "All teams return to the shuttle immediately." But the ship had other plans. Massive blast doors slammed shut throughout the corridors, trapping the Coalition team in different sections. The thick metal doors were designed to seal off damaged areas during combat. Now they separated the boarding party into small groups. "The doors won't respond to our override codes," one technician reported frantically. "Whatever is controlling the ship doesn't recognize our authority." Outside the carrier, Velthar's patrol fleet watched in growing horror. The ancient vessel was waking up. Armor plates shifted across its hull, revealing hundreds of weapon ports that had been hidden. Point defense turrets emerged from concealed positions. The massive railgun batteries began tracking the Coalition ships with mechanical precision. "Sir, the derelict is targeting us," the weapons officer reported. "Energy readings are off the scale. That reactor is producing more power than 3 of our dreadnoughts combined." Velthar stood frozen on his bridge, watching the monster awaken. "Do not fire," he ordered. "If we shoot first, those automated systems will interpret it as an attack. We'll trigger a battle with a ghost ship." Inside the carrier, Lieutenant Hyun pressed his hand against a wall panel, trying to stay calm. The vibrations told him the main reactor was climbing toward full combat power. Around him, trapped Coalition soldiers were panicking. "We're going to die in here," one of them shouted. "No," Hyun said firmly. "The ship won't kill us unless it thinks we're enemies. We need to reach the bridge and shut down the automated systems." Telena had been separated into a different section with 2 other scientists. She was scanning everything, trying to understand the ship's systems. "These automated protocols are incredibly sophisticated," she said. "The ship is checking for hostile intent. It's looking for weapons fire, forced entry, sabotage attempts. As long as we don't trigger those parameters, it will leave us alone." "How do you know that?" one of her companions asked. "Because we're still alive," Telena replied. "If this ship wanted us dead, we would be dead already." Hyun contacted the other trapped teams through their communicators. "Everyone listen carefully. I'm human. This is a human ship. I'm going to try to reach the bridge and take control. Until then, nobody touches any weapon systems. Nobody tries to force the doors. Stay calm and stay put." "How are you going to reach the bridge?" Velthar asked over the communication channel. "The doors are sealed. The ship has maintenance tunnels," Hyun explained. "They're designed for crew to move through the vessel when normal corridors are compromised. If the builders thought like I think they did, those tunnels will still be accessible." He found a maintenance hatch in the floor and pulled it open. The tunnel below was narrow and dark, barely wide enough for a person to crawl through. Hyun lowered himself inside and began moving toward the center of the ship. As he crawled through the darkness, his hands touched metal that was 2 centuries old but still solid. The humans who built this ship had designed every inch of it for survival. Even the maintenance tunnels had emergency lighting and oxygen supplies. Nothing was left to chance. It took him 30 minutes to reach the bridge level. When he emerged from another hatch, he found himself in the command center of the Indomitable. The room was massive, designed to coordinate thousands of crew members during battle. Control stations lined the walls. Holographic displays flickered to life as he entered, but Hyun was not alone. Standing in the center of the bridge was a holographic figure. It appeared human-shaped, made of blue light with no distinct features. When it spoke, the voice was calm and measured. "Identify yourself," the figure said. "Lieutenant Hyun, Galactic Coalition," he replied carefully. "But I'm human, Terran." "Terran identity confirmed through genetic scan," the hologram said. "Voice pattern matches human baseline. However, uniform and equipment do not match Terran Space Command specifications." "Explain." "What's your designation?" Hyun asked. "Guardian 7, Artificial Intelligence Tactical Class. Primary function, ship defense and crew protection. I have been operational for 203 years, 7 months, and 12 days. Hyun felt a chill run through him. This AI had been alone on this dead ship for over 2 centuries, maintaining systems, waiting for orders that never came. "Guardian 7, the war is over. The Vrikol were defeated. Humanity won." "Confirm victory status," Guardian 7 requested. "The Vrikol swarm was destroyed 200 years ago. Humanity survived. We joined the Galactic Coalition. We're at peace now." The hologram flickered. "Accessing historical databases. Cross-referencing with Coalition data streams. Confirmation received. The war has indeed ended." There was a pause. "Why did no one come back for this vessel?" Hyun took a deep breath. "The ship was lost. After the Battle of Kepler Station, you were ordered to return to Earth for repairs. But something went wrong. The carrier disappeared. We thought everyone aboard had died." "Negative," Guardian 7 said. "The crew survived. This vessel encountered a spatial anomaly during the return journey. We were pulled thousands of light years off course. When Captain Yuna realized we were lost beyond any hope of return, she made a decision." "What decision?" Hyun asked. "The crew evacuated in stasis pods to a nearby habitable planet. I have coordinates. Captain Yuna ordered me to preserve the ship as a time capsule. She believed that eventually someone would find it. The Indomitable would serve as a record of what humanity had accomplished and what we had sacrificed." Hyun looked around the silent bridge, imagining the crew abandoning their ship. They must have known they would never see home again. But they had chosen to live rather than die with their vessel. "Guardian 7, I need you to stand down the defensive systems. There are Coalition personnel trapped throughout the ship. They're allies, not enemies." "Understood." Defensive protocols suspended. Throughout the carrier, blast doors began opening. Trapped personnel hurried toward the shuttles. But then Guardian 7's hologram turned red. Warning. Multiple contacts detected. Unknown fleet approaching at attack vectors. Analyzing signatures. On the holographic display, Hyun saw them. 80 ships moving in formations that made his blood run cold. The sensor data scrolled past, showing biological components, electromagnetic patterns, and genetic markers. Identification complete, Guardian 7 announced. Contacts match vehicle swarm classification. Probability, 99.7%. That's impossible, Hyun whispered. We destroyed them all. Negative. Analysis suggests these vessels represent a secondary hive. Historical combat data indicates the recall encountered 200 years ago were only a fragment of the species. The main swarm must have fled into dark space. Hyun's hands gripped the command console. The Vrykul were supposed to be extinct. Humanity had fought a terrible war to make sure of it. But now they were back, and the only thing standing between them and the civilian systems nearby was a patrol fleet that couldn't possibly win. Guardian 7. Can this ship still fight? Affirmative. All primary systems are functional. Weapon systems are operational at 92% capacity. Armor integrity is at 78%. Reactor output is sufficient for extended combat operations. How many crew do you need? Optimal crew complement is 15,000 personnel. Minimum combat crew is 3,000. Current personnel available? 1. Hyun looked at the approaching enemy fleet on the display. He thought about the civilians who would die if the Vrykul reached them. He thought about the coalition patrol fleet that had laughed at this ship just hours ago. Guardian 7. Broadcast a message to Commander Velthar. Tell him the Vrykul are coming. Tell him this ship can fight, but we need crew. Ask for volunteers. Transmitting. On the coalition flagship, Velthar received the message. He looked at his crew, species from a dozen different worlds. They had mocked this ancient human warship. Now it was their only chance of survival. All personnel, Velthar announced. The human lieutenant is requesting volunteers to crew the Indomitable. This will be dangerous. This will likely be deadly. But if we run, millions of civilians will die. Every single member of his crew raised their hand. Within an hour, 300 coalition personnel had transferred to the carrier. They took positions at weapon stations, in engineering sections, and throughout the massive vessel. Guardian 7 guided them patiently, teaching alien warriors how to use human weapons of war. Hyun stood on the bridge, surrounded by aliens who now trusted humanity's brutal engineering. Through the viewscreen, he could see the Vrykul fleet approaching. All stations report ready, Guardian 7 announced. Then let's show them, Hyun said quietly, why humans built ships like this. The Indomitable turned toward the enemy and accelerated to attack speed. The Vrykul fleet moved through space like a swarm of insects. Their ships were biological nightmares, grown rather than built. Organic armor pulsed with sickly green light. Weapon ports opened like hungry mouths. They had been waiting in the darkness for 200 years, rebuilding their numbers, planning their revenge. When they detected the old human carrier, they transmitted a message in broken galactic standard. The translation was crude but clear enough. Terran vessel detected. Your species failed to destroy us. Now we will consume everything you left behind. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Hyun listened to the threat and felt cold rage building in his chest. His ancestors had fought these creatures. Millions of humans had died to stop them. And now they were back. Guardian 7, load all weapon systems. Prepare nuclear ordnance. Launch all combat drones and fighters. Acknowledged, the AI responded. Throughout the massive carrier, ancient machinery roared to life. Hangar bays opened, releasing swarms of automated fighters that had waited centuries for this moment. Missile tubes loaded warheads powerful enough to crack moons. 600 railgun batteries charged their capacitors. The coalition crew members at their stations felt the ship vibrating with power. These aliens had mocked the carrier's primitive design. Now they understood. The Indomitable was not elegant. It was not sophisticated. It was a hammer built to crush anything in its path. Commander Velthar watched from his flagship as the ancient warship prepared for battle. All coalition vessels, he ordered. Form up with the Indomitable. Coordinate targeting with their AI, we fight together. The Vrykul fleet expected an easy victory. They remembered fighting humans 2 centuries ago. The Terrans had been desperate prey, barely surviving each encounter. These creatures thought they were attacking a crippled museum piece. They were wrong. The Indomitable fired first. 600 railguns spoke as one. sending tungsten slugs downrange at 3/10 the speed of light. The Vrykol had energy shields designed to deflect plasma and laser fire. Those shields were useless against solid metal traveling at relativistic speeds. The first volley punched through 12 Vrykol ships, tearing them apart from bow to stern. The slugs didn't just penetrate armor, they turned entire vessels into expanding clouds of debris. Direct hits, Guardian 7 reported. Enemy shields ineffective against kinetic weapons. Continuing fire, the railguns kept firing. Reload systems that had been maintained for 200 years worked perfectly. Every 3 seconds, another devastating volley screamed toward the enemy. The Vrykol scattered, trying to avoid the murder that ancient human engineering was delivering. But the carrier had more than just railguns. Nuclear-tipped missiles launched from dozens of tubes, creating a wall of atomic fire between the Vrykol and the civilian systems they wanted to attack. The warheads detonated in carefully calculated patterns, creating overlapping fields of destruction that nothing could cross. "They're adapting," Telena called from her station. She had volunteered to help coordinate sensors. "The Vrykol are changing formation. They're trying to swarm us," she was right. The Vrykol remembered human tactics. They sent suicide ships toward the carrier, trying to overwhelm its defenses through sheer numbers. Dozens of biological vessels accelerated toward the Indomitable, their crews ready to die if it meant destroying the human warship. Guardian 7 had been waiting for this. Activating point defense grid. Along the carrier's hull, hundreds of smaller weapons came online. These were not the massive railguns, but rapid-fire cannons designed specifically to stop enemy fighters and missiles. They created overlapping fields of fire that nothing could survive. The suicide ships ran into a wall of metal. The point defense system destroyed them so efficiently that none got within 5 kilometers of the carrier. Debris and biological matter rained against the Indomitable's thick armor, leaving nothing but scorches. "Hull integrity at 76%, Guardian 7 reported calmly. All primary systems functional. The Coalition fleet joined the battle, their energy weapons adding to the chaos. Velthar realized something important. Coalition weapons and human weapons worked well together. The energy beams overloaded Vrykol shields, and then the railguns punched through the weakened defenses. It was like using a hammer and chisel together. "Target their command ships," Velthar ordered.
"Focus fire with the Indomitable."
Hyun nodded and pointed at 3 larger vessels in the enemy formation. Guardian 7, concentrate fire on those targets. Firing. The railguns adjusted their aim. The 3 Vrykol command ships disappeared in explosions of metal and biological matter. The enemy fleet wavered, confusion spreading through their ranks. But the Vrykol had their own surprises. From the back of their formation, massive bioships moved forward. These were different from the smaller vessels. They were 3 times the size of normal Vrykol ships, pulsing with dark energy. "Analyzing new contacts," Guardian 7 said. "Warning, energy signatures match historical records of Vrykol motherships. These vessels are capable of producing weapons that consume metal at molecular level." "Elaborate," Hyun demanded. The Vrykol developed biological weapons that eat through ship armor. During the original war, 3 human carriers were lost to these weapons. The Indomitable engaged 2 motherships at Kepler Station and survived, but at significant cost. As if to demonstrate, green beams shot from the motherships toward the Indomitable. Where they struck the armor, metal began to dissolve. The beams didn't just damage the ship, they consumed it, spreading like a disease across the hull. Alarms blared throughout the carrier. "Hull breach in sections 7 through 12, Guardian 7 reported. "The biological weapon is spreading. Emergency containment procedures initiated." Hyun watched as entire sections of the ship sealed themselves off, sacrificing those areas to save the rest. Coalition crew members in those sections had only seconds to evacuate before blast doors trapped the consuming weapons in isolated chambers. "We lost 40 personnel, Telena said, her voice shaking. "They knew the risks," Hyun replied, though his jaw was clenched tight. "Guardian 7, can we stop those motherships?" "Affirmative. Nuclear weapons remain effective against biological vessels. However, the motherships are heavily defended. Recommendation: close-range attack. You want us to get closer to the ships that can eat through our armor?" "Affirmative. At close range, our point defense can intercept their bioweapons before impact. Additionally, physical contact would allow us to deploy nuclear ordnance directly into their interior." Hyun understood what the AI was suggesting. It was insane. It was also exactly the kind of tactic humans would have used 200 years ago. You want us to ram them? It is the most efficient solution. Commander Velthar heard this exchange through the communication channel. Lieutenant Hyun, you cannot be serious. That's suicide. No, Hyun said. That's human military doctrine. We don't build ships expecting to bring them home. We build them to complete the mission. He looked at the coalition crew members on the bridge. They were aliens from species that valued sophisticated tactics and elegant solutions, but they had volunteered to crew this brutal human warship. Now they would learn what that truly meant. All crew, Hyun announced through the ship-wide communication system. We're going to ram the lead mothership. Anyone who wants to evacuate has 3 minutes to reach the shuttles. No one will think less of you. Nobody moved. The coalition crew members stayed at their stations. They had chosen to fight aboard the Indomitable, and they would see it through. Telena's skin flickered with colors showing determination. We're with you, Lieutenant. Guardian 7, Hyun ordered. Plot a ramming course. All power to forward shields and engines. Launch all remaining fighters to screen our approach. Acknowledged. Plotting course. The ancient carrier turned toward the nearest mothership. Its engines burned at maximum output, accelerating the massive vessel to attack speed. The Vrikol realized what was happening and tried to stop it. They threw everything they had at the Indomitable. Bioweapons struck the armor, eating away at metal that was already scarred from 2 centuries of waiting. Energy beams scorched the hull. Suicide ships crashed into the point defense grid. The carrier took damage that would have destroyed any coalition vessel 3 times over, but it kept coming. The thick armor absorbed hits. Backup systems came online when primary systems failed. Redundant power grids rerouted energy around damaged sections. The ship had been built by people who expected it to take punishment, and it was doing exactly what its designers had intended. 5 kilometers to target, Guardian 7 counted down. 4 kilometers. 3 kilometers. The Vrikol mothership tried to retreat, but it was too slow. The Indomitable was committed now, burning through the last of its emergency fuel reserves. 1 kilometer. Impact in 10 seconds, Hyun gripped his console. All crew brace for impact. The ancient human warship struck the biological mothership like a bullet hitting flesh. The carrier's reinforced bow punched deep into the Vrikol vessel's interior. The impact threw everyone forward in their seats despite the restraints, and then they were inside the enemy. The Indomitable's bow was buried deep inside the Vrikol mothership. Around them, biological walls pulsed and writhed. The impact had torn through dozens of chambers filled with alien warriors and organic machinery. Green fluid that served as the creature's blood poured through ruptured channels. Damage report, Hyun called out, pulling himself back into his seat. Hull integrity at 42%, Guardian 7 responded. Forward sections are compromised. Life support failing in multiple areas. Reactor output holding steady at 60% capacity. Through the view screen, they could see the inside of the mothership. It was like being inside a living nightmare. Organic tunnels stretched in every direction. Vrikol warriors were already moving toward the carrier, trying to repel the invaders. We need to deploy the nuclear ordnance before they push us out, Hyun said. Guardian 7, how many warheads can we manually arm? 50 nuclear warheads are available for manual deployment. However, this requires personnel to enter the mothership and place charges at key structural points. Hyun stood up. Then that's what we'll do. I need volunteers. Telena immediately stepped forward. I know where to place the charges for maximum effect. My people studied structural engineering. 2 coalition soldiers joined them. A Krovenian named Borum and a Meridian named Jiwon. They were both scared, but they stepped forward anyway. 4 people, Hyun said. Guardian 7, you'll guide us to the optimal locations. Acknowledged. Displaying navigation data. Warning, the mothership is aware of our presence. Vrikol warriors are converging on all entry points. Estimated time before overwhelming force arrives, 18 minutes. They armed themselves with weapons from the carrier's armory. The coalition soldiers stared at the human weapons with new respect. These were not elegant energy rifles. They were solid mechanical firearms that shot actual bullets. Primitive by galactic standards, but reliable, the 4 of them entered the mothership through a breach in the carrier's hull. The interior was warm and humid, like being inside a living creature's stomach. The walls pulsed around them. Strange sounds echoed from deeper in the vessel. Guardian 7's voice came through their communicators. First charge location is 60 meters ahead. Take the left tunnel. They moved quickly through the organic corridors. The walls felt disgusting under their hands, slick with fluids. Behind them, they could hear the screeching sounds of Vrykul warriors approaching. Contact! Borum shouted as 3 Vrykul rounded the corner ahead. The creatures were nightmares made flesh. They had too many limbs, all ending in sharp claws. Their heads were covered in sensors that glowed with malevolent intelligence. They had been humanity's enemy 200 years ago, and evolution had only made them more deadly. Hyun fired first. His weapon kicked against his shoulder, sending bullets down range. The rounds punched through the first Vrykul's organic armor. It screamed and fell. Jiwan and Borum added their fire. The confined space of the tunnel worked in their favor. The Vrykul couldn't swarm them, and the kinetic weapons proved devastatingly effective at close range. Keep moving, Hyun ordered after the last creature fell. They reached the first deployment point. Telena examined the structure around them. This is a primary support column, she said. If we destroy it, this entire section will collapse. Hyun placed the first nuclear warhead and armed it manually. The device beeped as it activated, counting down. 15 minutes until detonation. Let's move. They fought their way deeper into the mothership. More Vrykul appeared, and each battle was desperate. The coalition soldiers learned to fight like humans had fought 2 centuries ago. With determination, brutality, and an unwillingness to quit even when wounded. Jiwon took a claw strike to her arm but kept firing. Borum's armor was torn open, but he refused to fall back. Telena placed charges with shaking hands while the others defended her. Second charge armed, she called out. 13 minutes to detonation. Third location is 100 meters deeper, Guardian 7 guided. Warning. Massive enemy force is approaching your position. 50+ contacts. We can't fight that many, Borum said, breathing hard. We don't have to fight them all, Hyun replied. We just need to survive long enough to place the charges. They ran through the twisting tunnels. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit grew louder. The Vrykul were rallying their forces, trying to stop the intruders before they could complete their mission. At the third location, Telena worked frantically to place the charge. Hyun and the others formed a defensive line. The first wave of Vrykul crashed into them like a living tide. The battle was chaos. Bullets flew. Claws tore at armor. Blood, both red and green, splattered the organic walls. Borum fell, his throat torn open by a Vrykul's claws. He died defending his position, still firing until his last breath. Borum is down, Jaewon shouted. Third charge armed, Telena yelled. 11 minutes. They abandoned Borum's body and ran. The Vrykul were right behind them, an endless swarm of hatred and hunger. These creatures had waited 200 years for revenge. They would not let the humans escape. Fourth location, 50 meters ahead, Guardian 7 directed. You must hurry. Jiwan was slowing down, her wounded arm bleeding heavily.
Go, she gasped.
I'll hold them here. No, Hyun protested. Someone has to, Jiwan said. She turned to face the pursuing swarm, her weapon raised. Tell them we fought well. She opened fire and the Vrykul swarm crashed over her position. Her weapon fired until the very end, giving Hyun and Telena precious seconds to escape. They placed the fourth charge with tears on their faces. 3 more to go, but their time was running short. Guardian 7, Hyun called. Can we reach the remaining locations in time? Negative. Current pace and enemy resistance make completion impossible with remaining time. Telena looked at Hyun. We place what we can. 7 charges might be enough. They fought toward the 5th location. Hyun's ammunition was running low. Telena had a deep cut across her face. They were exhausted, wounded, and running out of time. 5th charge armed, Telena said. 9 minutes remaining. 6th location is 30 meters deeper, Guardian 7 directed. However, I must inform you that an optimal solution has been calculated. What solution? Hyun asked. If all remaining warheads are placed at a single location, the chain reaction will be sufficient to destroy the mothership. I have identified the optimal location, the central reactor core. It is 80 meters from your current position. Can we make it? Probability of success, 37%. Probability of survival, 8%. Hyun and Telena looked at each other. They were going to die here. They both knew it. But if they could destroy this mothership, the rest of the Vrykul fleet would fall. Let's go, Hyun said. They ran through the nightmarish corridors with the entire enemy force behind them. Vrikal warriors threw themselves at the fleeing pair, but Hyun and Telena fought like demons. They had come too far to fail now. The reactor core was massive, a pulsing biological heart that powered the entire mothership. They could feel its heat from the entrance. "Place all remaining charges here," Telena said. "I'll need 5 minutes to connect them properly." "You don't have 5 minutes," Hyun said, looking back at the approaching swarm. "Do it in 3. He stood at the entrance to the reactor chamber and prepared to make his last stand. His weapon had 30 rounds remaining. There were hundreds of recall coming. Behind him, Telena worked frantically, connecting the nuclear warheads into a single devastating device. Her hands shook but stayed precise. Hyun fired his first shot, then his second. The Vrikal kept coming. He fired until his weapon clicked empty, then drew a knife from his belt. If he was going to die, he would die fighting, just like his ancestors had 2 centuries ago. "Done," Telena shouted. "Charges armed." 5 minutes until detonation. "Go," Hyun yelled. "Get back to the ship." "Not without you." But before Hyun could respond, a holographic figure appeared between them and the Vrikal swarm. Guardian 7 had projected itself into the mothership's biological systems. "This unit has been operational for 200 years, the AI said calmly. "This is where my service ends. I will hold them here." Guardian 7, "No." Hyun protested. "You must survive to tell the story," the AI said. "Return to the Indomitable, evacuate. This is my final order." The hologram expanded and somehow the AI seized control of the mothership's biological systems. Walls collapsed. Organic machinery went haywire. The Vrikal swarm found itself fighting the ship itself. Hyun grabbed Telena and ran. Behind them, they heard Guardian 7's voice one last time. "It has been an honor to serve." They reached the Indomitable with 2 minutes remaining. The remaining coalition crew had prepared the last evacuation shuttle. Hyun and Telena threw themselves inside and the shuttle launched. From a safe distance, they watched the mothership die. 50 nuclear warheads detonated simultaneously, tearing the biological vessel apart from within. The explosion was beautiful and terrible, a sun blooming in the darkness of space. The blast consumed 30 more Vrikal ships. The remaining enemy fleet, broken and leaderless, tried to flee. The coalition fleet hunted them down. Not a single Vrikal escaped. The battle was over. The Vrikal fleet was destroyed. Nothing but expanding clouds of debris and biological matter. The civilian systems were safe, but the cost had been terrible. Commander Veltar sat in his command chair staring at the casualty reports. 300 coalition personnel had volunteered to crew the Indomitable. Only 78 survived. The rest had died fighting aboard the ancient carrier or in the desperate mission inside the mothership. The Indomitable itself floated dead in space, torn apart by battle damage and the ramming attack. Its reactor had finally gone cold. The mighty warship that had waited 200 years for one last fight had given everything in that final battle. "Recover all bodies," Veltar ordered quietly. Human, Kravenian, Meridian, all of them. They died as warriors. They deserved to be honored. In the medical bay of Velthar's flagship, Hyun and Telena received treatment for their wounds. Neither spoke much. They were alive, but their friends were not. Borum and G1 had died fighting in the corridors of the mothership. Guardian 7 had sacrificed itself to give them a chance to escape. News of the battle spread quickly through coalition space. Within days, the galaxy learned the truth about humanity's past. The ancient war against the Vrikal, the 43 supercarriers that humans had built, the desperate battles for survival, the choice to dismantle their war machine after victory. Some species were frightened. Humans had hidden such military capability for 50 years. What else were they hiding? Could they be trusted? Others gained new respect. Humanity had won a war of extinction against a nightmare species, then chosen peace. That took strength of a different kind. The Galactic Coalition called an emergency summit. Human representatives were summoned to answer questions. Ambassador Sujin, a calm woman with gray hair and steady eyes, stood before the assembled alien leaders. "You lied to us," one of the council members accused. "You hid your military history. You pretended to be peaceful merchants while concealing weapons capable of destroying entire fleets." "We did not lie," Sujin replied calmly. "We simply chose not to speak of our past. The war against the Vrikal was the darkest time in human history. We built weapons that terrified us. We became something we did not want to be. And yet you won. another council member said. Yes, Sujin acknowledged. We won because we were willing to do whatever was necessary to survive. But when the war ended, we made a choice. We could stay as warriors, feared and isolated, or we could become something better. We chose to be better. What stops you from choosing to be warriors again? The first council member demanded. You have the knowledge. You could rebuild your war fleet in a few years. You could conquer half the galaxy before anyone could stop you. Sujin smiled sadly. The same thing that stopped us 200 years ago. We are not conquerors. We built the Indomitable and ships like it because we had to, not because we wanted to. When the necessity ended, so did our war machine. But you still remember how to build such weapons, a Meridian representative said. Yes, Sujin admitted. We remember. And if the galaxy faces another threat like the Vrikol, we will remember what we are capable of. We will do what must be done. But until that day, we choose peace. Not because we are weak, but because we are strong enough to choose. The council chamber fell silent. Finally, Velthar stood. He had been invited to speak about the battle. I mocked the Indomitable, he said. I called it primitive. I laughed at its thick armor and kinetic weapons. I thought humans were naive traitors who knew nothing of real war. He paused. I was wrong about everything. He looked at the assembled leaders. That ancient ship saved billions of lives. The coalition fleet could not have stopped the Vrikol alone. We would have been destroyed, and the civilian systems would have fallen. But the Indomitable, with its crude weapons and excessive armor, did what our sophisticated vessels could not. Are you suggesting we adopt human weapons? Someone asked. I am suggesting we learn from human philosophy, Velthar replied. Humans build redundancy into everything. They expect systems to fail and plan for it. They design for survival, not elegance. Perhaps there is wisdom in that approach. The debate continued for hours. Eventually, the coalition reached a decision. Humanity would remain a full member, but there would be changes. Human engineers would consult on coalition ship designs, adding redundancy and kinetic weapon systems. The focus on elegant, sophisticated technology would be balanced with practical, reliable backups. The galaxy would learn from what the Indomitable had taught them. Months passed. A memorial was built at the battle site. It was constructed from a piece of the Indomitable's armor, melted and scarred by 2 centuries of waiting, and one final battle. Inscribed on it were the names of everyone who had served aboard the carrier, from its original construction to its final fight. Captain Yuna's name was there. The 8,000 who died at Kepler Station, the crew who evacuated to the distant world, Guardian 7 whose sacrifice had saved Hyun and Telena, Borum and Jiwan who died placing the nuclear charges. Humans and aliens both came to pay their respects. It became a symbol of courage, sacrifice, and the choice to be better than your worst fears. Hyun stood before the memorial on the anniversary of the battle. He was alone carrying flowers, a human tradition. He placed them at the base of the monument. Thank you, he whispered to the names inscribed in metal. The galaxy knows now. You can rest, behind him a voice spoke. Lieutenant Hyun? He turned to see Telena. Her wounds had healed, leaving thin scars across her face. She carried her own offering, a crystal sphere containing light from her homeworld. I come here every month, she said, placing the sphere next to Hyun's flowers. To remember. They should be remembered, Hyun agreed. They stood together in silence for a while. Then Telena spoke again. I have a question. Why did humans dismantle all those carriers? If you had kept even a few, the Vrikol would never have dared to return. Hyun considered this. Because keeping them would have meant staying as we were during the war. Scared, angry, ready to kill. We wanted to be more than that. Was it worth it? Telena asked. Hundreds died because you were unprepared. Millions lived because we chose peace, Hyun replied. The Vrikol were a remnant, a last fragment of a defeated enemy. If we had stayed in a war posture, we would have spent 2 centuries preparing for threats that might never come. Instead, we spent those centuries building, trading, learning. We made friends across the galaxy. He gestured to the memorial. The Indomitable gave us one last gift. It reminded us that we can choose peace without being weak. We can remember how to fight without living as warriors. Telena's skin flickered with understanding. The galaxy learned the same lesson. Yes, Hyun said. They learned that sometimes the most sophisticated answer is not elegant technology. Sometimes it is simply refusing to quit. Years passed. The memorial grew, with more offerings from more species. The Battle of Andromeda Gateway became a turning point in galactic history. Coalition ships began incorporating human design philosophies, redundant systems, kinetic weapons alongside energy weapons, thick armor backed by multiple layers of defense. Nobody called these designs primitive anymore. They called them reliable. In a human university on Earth, Professor Minho taught engineering to students from a dozen different worlds. He had survived the battle aboard the Indomitable and now dedicated his life to teaching the next generation. The ship was over-engineered, he told his class. It was inefficient by modern standards. It used brute force solutions to problems that elegant technology could have solved better. It was, in every technical sense, primitive. A young student, human and alien, both in the class, raised her hand. Then why do we study it? Minho smiled. He had been asked this question 100 times. The answer never changed. Because it worked, he said simply. When sophisticated systems failed, human systems kept fighting. When elegant solutions proved insufficient, brutal reliability won the day. The Indomitable survived 200 years of waiting and died completing its mission. That is engineering at its finest, regardless of how primitive it looks. He pulled up a hologram of the carrier, showing its massive armor plates and redundant systems. This ship was built by people who expected the worst and planned for it. Every system had a backup. Every backup had a backup. Nothing was left to chance. But we have better technology now, another student said. We do not need to build like this anymore. You are wrong, Minho said gently. Technology improves, weapons advance, but the fundamental principles remain. Reliability, redundancy, refusal to quit. These are not primitive concepts. These are eternal truths. He looked around the classroom at the young faces, human and alien. The galaxy learned something important from the Indomitable. It learned that humans are capable of great violence when necessary. But more importantly, it learned that humans are capable of great restraint when possible. We built the most powerful war machine the galaxy had ever seen, and then we chose to put it away. Will humans build such ships again? A Kravanian student asked. If we must, Minho replied, but only if we must. That is the true lesson, not that we can fight, but that we can choose not to. Outside the classroom window, construction continued on a new space station. Human engineers worked alongside alien colleagues,